He assumed his wealth entitled him to degrade her. He thought the server's uniform she wore determined her intelligence. Marcus Whitmore, a man whose single word could shake the stock market, made the catastrophic mistake of confusing silence with stupidity. He labeled her illiterate in front of Chicago's entire upper crust. He didn't realize that the woman pouring his wine wasn't just waiting tables. She was a genius hiding in plain sight. And when she finally spoke her mind, she didn't just defend herself. She demolished his entire ego in 5 different languages. This is the story of the dinner that rocked the Windy City. If you love stories of justice and redemption, smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss another inspiring tale like this. The rain hammered against the reinforced windows of Orlia, the jewel in Chicago's fine dining crown. Inside, everything was pristine, scented with Alba white truffle and generational privilege. The lighting was dim, honey-colored, calculated to make diamonds sparkle and age lines disappear. For Isabel Martinez, the amber glow was just another layer of pressure in an already crushing shift. Isabel tugged at her black skirt's waistband. It was too large, inherited from a server who'd quit 3 weeks ago in tears. Isabel couldn't afford the luxury of quitting. Her bank balance sat at $47, and her father's nursing facility in the South Side had just raised their monthly rates again. "Table 9 is yours, Martinez. Don't blow this." Derek Chen, the floor manager, hissed in her ear. Derek was perpetually sweating despite the aggressive climate control. He gripped his leather portfolio like a shield. "We have a VIP tonight, a major VIP." Isabel smoothed her apron. "Who is it?" "Marcus Whitmore." Derek whispered the name like it was sacred or cursed. "Hedge fund king. He bought the entire block on Michigan Avenue just to demolish it for his view. He's brutal. He's bringing someone. Stay invisible. Pour from the right. And for God's sake, don't speak unless he asks you directly." Marcus Whitmore. Isabel felt her stomach drop. She knew that name, not from gossip columns, though he appeared in them regularly, usually with models young enough to be his daughters. She knew the name from the dusty bankruptcy files her father used to cry over before the stroke stole his mind. Whitmore was the corporate vulture who had torn apart her father's independent bookstore chain, Martinez Literary Group, piece by piece, liquidating everything and abandoning the workers with nothing. He was why she'd abandoned her doctoral program at Columbia. He was why she was carrying plates of caviar instead of completing her dissertation on Romance language evolution. "I can manage him," Isabel said, her voice controlled though her hands shook behind her back. "You don't manage a predator, Martinez," Derek snapped, wiping his brow. "You just try not to get eaten. Go." Isabel walked onto the floor. The restaurant was a showcase of obscene wealth. At table 3, a tech founder wore a hoodie worth more than Isabel's annual earnings. At table 8, a celebrity was dissecting a single lettuce leaf with surgical precision. But table 9 commanded the room's gravity. Marcus Whitmore sat there, occupying more space than physics should allow. Late 50s, silver-haired, with a face that looked carved from marble and arrogance. His suit was custom Savile Row, charcoal gray. Across from him sat a young woman, maybe 23, scrolling mindlessly on her phone. She wore a crimson dress that demanded attention, yet Whitmore seemed to ignore her completely. Isabel approached the table. She took a breath, burying the daughter who remembered the bankruptcy and summoning the waitress who needed the tips. "Good evening. Welcome to Orlia," Isabel said, her voice gentle, professional, blending into the background symphony of clinking crystal. "My name is Isabel, and I'll be serving you tonight." Whitmore didn't look up. He was scrutinizing the leather-bound menu as if searching for a lawsuit opportunity. He waved dismissively in her direction without eye contact. "Water," he barked, "sparkling, and not that domestic garbage. Bring the Pellegrino and make sure the ice is crushed, not cubed. I detest the sound of ice cubes." "Of course, sir," Isabel said. "And replace this napkin," he added, finally glancing up, his eyes cold and predatory. He pointed a manicured finger at the linen. It has a wrinkle on the edge. It looks cheap. Does the manager realize you're setting tables like a roadside diner? The napkin was flawless. The wrinkle was a lighting illusion. But Isabel understood the game. You don't win by being right. You win by being invisible. My apologies, sir. I'll replace it right away. As she reached for the napkin, Whitmore turned to his date. Ashley, put that phone away. You look juvenile. We're here to discuss your shopping budget, not scroll through Instagram. Ashley sighed, dropping the phone onto the table with a clatter. You're being difficult, Marcus. I'm difficult because incompetence surrounds me, Whitmore said, loud enough for neighboring tables to hear. He looked at Isabel, who was placing down a fresh, identical napkin. See, was that so complicated? It requires a certain intelligence level to understand standards. Sadly, that level is increasingly rare. Isabel froze for a microsecond. The insult was casual, tossed like trash. Incompetence. She finished with the napkin. I'll return with your water shortly, Mr. Whitmore. As she walked away, she heard him chuckle, a dry, grating sound. Pretty girl. Bit dim, though. You can see it in the eyes. Empty. Probably dropped out of community college to chase some Instagram influencer dream that never materialized. Isabel walked into the kitchen, the heavy doors cutting off his laughter. She gripped the stainless steel counter's edge, knuckles white. You okay, Martinez? A line cook asked, searing a scallop. Fine, Isabel whispered. She closed her eyes and recited Dante's Inferno in the original Italian to steady herself. Non raginium di lor, ma guarda e passa. Let us not speak of them, but look and pass on. She grabbed the Pellegrino. She wasn't just going to serve him, she was going to survive him. But she had no idea that tonight, Marcus Whitmore wasn't looking for a server. He was looking for a victim. The appetizer service was psychological warfare. Marcus Whitmore treated the menu not as food options, but as a test of Isabel's endurance. He interrogated her about the oyster's origin. He demanded to know the exact farm where the microgreens grew. When Isabel answered correctly, citing the farm in northern Illinois, he accused her of fabricating answers to sound knowledgeable. You're just reciting a script, Whitmore sneered, tossing the menu down. You have no idea what you're talking about. You've probably never seen a farm, let alone tasted a Kumamoto oyster. You eat what? McDonald's, Chipotle. Ashley giggled nervously. Marcus, stop. You're embarrassing me. I'm educating you, Ashley. You must be demanding with these people. He gestured vaguely at Isabel. They depend on our passivity. If you don't challenge them, they deliver mediocrity. Isabel stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind her back. Are you ready to order your entree, sir? The duck, Whitmore said, but tell the chef I want the sauce separately. I don't want the meat drowning in wine. It masks cheap quality. Our duck is sourced from a premier farm in Indiana and is of exceptional quality, sir, Isabel said gently. But I'll note sauce on the side. And for wine, Whitmore snapped his fingers. Send the sommelier. I don't want you fumbling with the cork and getting debris in a $4,000 bottle. Isabel nodded. Our sommelier, Mr. Peterson, is currently in the cellar doing inventory, but he personally selected tonight's pairings. However, if you prefer, I'm fully certified in wine service. Whitmore looked at her, a smirk playing on his lips. He leaned back, examining her with open contempt. You trained, he laughed. Sweetheart, opening a beer bottle with a lighter at a college party isn't wine service. I'm ordering a Chateau Margaux 1996. Do you even know how to pronounce that? Or did you just hear me say it? Isabel felt heat prick behind her eyes. The 1996 Margaux, a beautiful, complex vintage. She remembered her father opening a bottle on her 21st birthday before everything collapsed. They discussed the notes of blackcurrant and violet for an hour. Chateau Margaux, Premier Grand Cru Classé 1996, Isabel said, her pronunciation flawless, the French vowels round and precise. An excellent selection, sir. It's renowned for its silky tannins and lengthy finish. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. He didn't like being surprised. He didn't like servants speaking the master's language. "Don't parrot me," he spat. "It's irritating. Just fetch the bottle and bring the decanter. If you damage the cork, I'm deducting it from your tips, which, judging by your performance, won't amount to much." Isabel turned on her heel. She went to the wine station. Her hands trembled not from fear but from rage boiling up from her core. She carefully selected the bottle. She retrieved the crystal decanter. When she returned to table 9, Whitmore was mid-story. "So I told the board, if you don't slash the pension fund, the stock crashes. It's simple mathematics. Who cares if a few hundred retirees lose their benefits? They should have saved better. It's natural selection. The intelligent survive. The illiterate perish." Illiterate, the word hung in the air like smoke. Isabel set the decanter down. She presented the label to him. He waved it away without looking. "Just pour it. God, why is everything a performance with you people?" Isabel began the ritual. She cut the foil. She wiped the lip. She inserted the corkscrew. The movement was fluid, practiced, elegant. She pulled the cork smoothly. No sound, no breakage. She poured a small taste into his glass. Whitmore picked it up, swirled it aggressively, and sipped. He grimaced. "It's corked," he announced loudly. Isabel paused. "Sir." "I said it's corked. Are you deaf as well as incompetent? It tastes like wet cardboard and mold." He slammed the glass down, sloshing red wine onto the pristine white tablecloth. Isabel looked at the stain. It resembled a gunshot wound on the fabric. "Sir," Isabel said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming steel, "I inspected the cork myself. It's in perfect condition. The wine has been stored at 55 degrees with 70% humidity. Perhaps the tannins are tighter than you anticipated." The restaurant went silent. Fork clatter ceased at nearby tables. A waitress did not correct Marcus Whitmore. Whitmore's face turned crimson, matching the wine. He slowly stood. He was tall, imposing, accustomed to shrinking people with his height. "Did you just correct me?" he whispered, voice trembling with menace. "I'm simply standing by the wine's quality, sir." "You stupid little girl," Whitmore hissed. "You're a waitress, you carry plates, you wipe tables. You don't lecture me about wine. I have watches that cost more than your education." He grabbed the Margaux bottle, the $4,000 bottle, and shoved it toward her. "Take this vinegar away and get me the manager. I want you fired. I want you on the street where you belong. You're obviously illiterate in how the world works if you think you can speak to me like that." "Illiterate," Isabel repeated. "Yes, uneducated, common," he sneered, leaning close. "I bet you can barely read the menu in English, let alone comprehend French wine. You're here because you have no other options. You're a placeholder, a zero." Ashley looked down at her lap, mortified. Derek, the manager, was sprinting across the dining room, face ghost pale, but it was too late. Isabel looked at Marcus Whitmore. She looked at the man who had destroyed her father. She looked at the man who thought money substituted for humanity. She set the bottle down with a definitive thud. She removed her apron. She folded it neatly and placed it over the empty chair's back. "Mr. Whitmore," Isabel said. And this time her voice wasn't the soft, submissive voice of a server. It was the projecting, resonant voice of a woman who had defended her thesis before Columbia's toughest linguistic board. "You've used that word, illiterate, 3 times tonight," she began. "I don't think it means what you think it means." Derek reached the table. "Isabel, please." Isabel held up a hand, silencing him. She didn't break eye contact with Whitmore. "Since you're so concerned with my education," she continued, "perhaps we should conduct this conversation in a language more befitting your status. English seems too common for you." And then Isabel Martinez took a breath, and the atmosphere in Orlia shifted. The air pressure dropped. The storm was about to break. The silence in Orlia was absolute. Even the ambient jazz seemed to fade. All eyes, the tech founder, the celebrity, the socialites, were fixed on table 9. Marcus Whitmore blinked, confused by the sudden change in Isabel's demeanor. He expected tears. He expected begging. He did not expect the cold, analytical stare of an equal. "Excuse me," Whitmore scoffed, trying to regain footing. "Are you having a breakdown? Derek, get her out of here." Isabel ignored the manager. She took a half-step closer to the table, her posture shifting from servitude to command. "Monsieur Whitmore," she began, her French rapid-fire and impeccable, far more native than the few pretentious words Whitmore had thrown around earlier. "Vous confondez l'arrogance avec l'intelligence. Si vous n'êtes pas bouchonné, il a simplement besoin de respirer, tout comme votre esprit semble avoir besoin de s'ouvrir." "Mr. Whitmore, you confuse arrogance with intelligence. This wine is not corked. It simply needs to breathe, just as your mind seems to need opening." Whitmore's mouth opened slightly. He understood high school French enough to order off a menu, but this was complex, rapid Parisian French. He caught the tone, but the nuance escaped him. "Speak English," he barked. "Stop babbling." Isabel didn't blink. She switched instantly to German. The guttural sounds were sharp, percussive, hitting him like physical blows. "Sie glauben, Geld kauft einen in Class. Aber Class ist etwas, das Sie nicht in Ihrem Portfolio finden. Sie beleidigen die Menschen, die Ihr Essen serveren, while Sie tief im Inneren wissen, dass Sie klein sind." You believe money buys you class, but class is something you don't find in your portfolio. You insult the people who serve your food because deep down you know you are small. Whitmore's face went from red to purple. He looked at Ashley, then at Derek. "What is she saying? Is she threatening me?" She's speaking German, sir," Derek stammered, terrified. "I know it's German," Whitmore shouted. "Make her stop." But Isabel was just beginning. She turned to Ashley, her expression softening slightly, switching to Italian, musical, expressive, and full of sorrow. "Signorina, mi dispiace per lei. Un uomo ci tratta male che lo serve, la tratterà male non appena la sua bellezza svanerà, fugga finché più." "Miss, I feel sorry for you. A man who treats those who serve him badly will treat you badly as soon as your beauty fades. Run while you can." Ashley's eyes widened. She understood Italian. She'd studied art history in Rome. Her face flushed, and she looked at Whitmore with sudden dawning realization. What did she?" Ashley started to whisper. "I don't care what she said." Whitmore slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. "You are fired. Do you hear me? Fired. I will ensure you never work in this city again." Isabel laughed. It was genuine, devoid of fear. She switched again, this time to Mandarin Chinese. The tones were perfect, rising and falling with precise cadence. "Your threats are meaningless to me. You think you control everything, but you cannot even control your own temper. True poverty is not a lack of money, but a lack of virtue." The tech founder at table 3, who did extensive business in Beijing, dropped his fork. He let out a low whistle. "Damn," he whispered to his dinner companion. "Her tones are better than my translators." Whitmore was panting now. He felt surrounded, though it was just one woman standing before him. He felt the room's eyes stripping him naked. He was the illiterate one now, unable to decode the messages being delivered to his face. "Get out," Whitmore screamed, standing and pointing to the door. "Security." Isabel stood her ground. She took one final step back, creating a stage for her finale. She looked him dead in the eye and spoke in Latin, the root of the languages she'd just wielded, the language of law, history, and the foundation of the civilization Whitmore claimed to represent. "Quod sumus hoc eritus, sic transit gloria mundi." What we are, you will be. Thus passes the glory of the world. She paused, letting the ancient words hang in the air. Then she switched back to English, the crisp, clear English of a Columbia scholar. "You called me illiterate, Mr. Whitmore, yet I just addressed you in the 5 languages I used to write my doctoral thesis on comparative linguistics. I speak these languages to understand the world. You use your one language to belittle it." She reached into her apron pocket, now draped over the chair, and pulled out a cheap ballpoint pen. She tossed it onto the table next to the corked wine. "My name is Isabel Martinez, daughter of Carlos Martinez. You remember him. You acquired his bookstore chain 7 years ago. You called him obsolete during the hostile takeover. The stress gave him a stroke 4 months later." Whitmore froze. The color drained from his face instantly. The name Martinez hit him harder than the German or the Mandarin. It was a ghost from his ledger. "Carlos Martinez," he whispered. "He's in a nursing home on the south side," Isabel said, her voice shaking slightly with emotion now. "I work double shifts here to pay for his physical therapy because you stripped his pension fund to pad your bonus that year. I'm not serving you because I'm stupid. I'm serving you because you stole my future to buy that suit." She looked around the room. Every diner was watching. Phones were out. The tech founder was recording. Ashley was staring at Whitmore with horror. "I quit," Isabel said to Derek. "I'm sorry, Derek, but I can't breathe this air anymore." She turned back to Whitmore one last time. "Enjoy the Margox, Marcus. It's not corked, but it might taste a little bitter now." Isabel turned and walked toward the exit. The sound of her sensible work shoes on the hardwood floor was the only sound in the room. As she reached the door, slow clapping started. It was the tech founder. He stood up. Then the celebrity at table 8 stood up. Then Ashley, Whitmore's own date, slowly pushed her chair back and stood up. Marcus Whitmore stood alone at his table, surrounded by a standing ovation that was not for him. He looked down at the wine glass, his hand trembling so hard the liquid rippled. But the story didn't end there, because in the age of the internet, nothing stays inside the restaurant. The heavy oak door of Oralia clicked shut behind Isabel, cutting off the applause instantly. The silence of the Chicago street was jarring. The adrenaline that had sustained her inside, that had allowed her to stand tall like an avenging angel, evaporated in the cold night air. In its place, a crushing wave of nausea washed over her. Her knees buckled and she leaned against the rough brick wall of the alley, gasping for breath. It was raining harder now. The water soaked through her thin white blouse and the oversized black skirt, chilling her to the bone. She looked at her hands. They were shaking violently. "What did I do?" she whispered to the wet pavement. "What did I just do?" The victory was an illusion. The reality was the $47 in her bank account. The reality was rent due in 4 days. The reality was the medication her father needed that wasn't covered by Medicaid. She hadn't just quit a job. She had severed her lifeline. In the world of high-end dining, word traveled at light speed. Marcus Whitmore wouldn't just fire her. He would blacklist her. No fine dining establishment in Chicago would hire the waitress who humiliated a billionaire. Isabel began walking toward the L station, her sensible shoes splashing in puddles of oil and dirty water. She hugged herself, trying to keep warm. She felt small again. The scholar was gone. The struggling daughter remained. "Wait, Isabel." The voice came from behind her. Isabel turned, half expecting Derek coming to yell at her, or perhaps security to detain her. It was Ashley. The young woman in the crimson dress was running down the sidewalk, holding her heels in one hand, ignoring the ruin of her expensive salon blowout. She caught up to Isabel, breathless, shivering in the cold. "You left this," Ashley panted, holding out a thick envelope. It was the cash tip envelope usually left on the table. "I grabbed it before Marcus noticed. He's still sitting there, staring at the wall." Isabel looked at the envelope. "I can't take that, it's theft." "It's not theft," Ashley insisted, shoving it into Isabel's cold, wet hand. It's severance, please. Isabel looked into Ashley's eyes. Inside the restaurant, Ashley had seemed shallow, a caricature of a trophy girlfriend. Out here in the rain, stripped of pretense, she looked terrified and young. "Why are you doing this?" Isabel asked softly. Ashley looked back toward the restaurant, fear etched in her features. "Because you said what I've wanted to say for 3 years. You spoke Italian to me. You told me to run." Tears mixed with rain on her face. "I don't know if I can run yet. He pays for my mother's medical bills, but watching you, it sparked something. You were brave. I wanted to help the brave girl." Isabel tightened her grip on the envelope. It felt thick. Maybe $600, maybe more. It was a week of safety. "Thank you," Isabel whispered. "Go," Ashley said, stepping back. "He's calling his lawyers. He's calling everyone. He wants to destroy you. Disappear, Isabel." Ashley turned and ran back toward the warmth of abusive luxury. She wasn't ready to leave yet, leaving Isabel alone under the street lamp. Isabel walked down the L station stairs, the smell of ozone and old trash greeting her. She swiped her CTA card, $2, 50 deducted. She had $44.50 left in the bank. She sat on the orange plastic bench surrounded by tired commuters. A man across from her was asleep, mouth open. A teenager was listening to music, head bobbing. None of them knew that 10 minutes ago she had dismantled a titan of industry. Here, she was just another wet, exhausted woman in a uniform heading to the south side. She didn't check her phone. She couldn't bear to look. She just closed her eyes and leaned her head against the rattling window, praying that the envelope in her pocket was enough to buy her a little time. Southview Care Facility smelled of antiseptic and overcooked vegetables. It was a depressing place, the kind where the linoleum peeled at the corners and the fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. It was all Isabel could afford. It was 11:45 p.m. by the time she signed in at the front desk. "You're late, Isabel," the night nurse, Mrs. Patterson, said without looking up from her crossword. "Visiting hours ended 90 minutes ago." "I know, Mrs. Patterson. Please, I just need to see him. I had a very difficult night." Mrs. Patterson looked up, seeing the soaked hair and red-rimmed eyes. Her expression softened. "5 minutes. He's been restless tonight, kept asking for inventory sheets." Isabel walked down the dimly lit hallway to room 217. Carlos Martinez lay in the bed, looking smaller than she remembered. The stroke had taken half his mobility and much of his speech, but it was the loss of his spirit that hurt most. This was the man who had built a literary empire from nothing. This was the man who had taught her to read Cervantes at age 7. Now he was a ghost haunting his own body. Isabel pulled the plastic chair to the bedside. She didn't turn on the main light, just the small reading lamp. "Papa," she whispered, "it's me, it's Bella." Carlos's eyes fluttered open. They were milky, unfocused. He looked at the ceiling, his lips moving silently. "Inventory," he mumbled. "Check the numbers." "The numbers are fine, Papa," Isabel said, her voice cracking. She reached out and took his frail hand. His skin felt like dry parchment. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to tell him that she had seen the monster. She wanted to tell him that she had looked Marcus Whitmore in the eye and used the education Carlos had given her to strike a blow for their family. But she couldn't. It would only upset him. He lived in a fragmented past. Dragging him into the painful present was cruel. "I lost the job, Papa," she confessed to the silence of the room. "I couldn't stay quiet. I'm sorry. I know we need the money. I'll find something else, maybe tutoring. I'll figure it out." She rested her forehead against his hand and wept. It was quiet, desperate weeping. She felt the weight of the world crushing her. The envelope from Ashley was a temporary fix. What about next month? What about winter? Suddenly her pocket buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again, a continuous rhythmic vibration. Isabel wiped her eyes and pulled out her cracked iPhone. She had 9 missed calls, 17 text messages, and her notifications bar was a solid block of white. "Who is calling me?" She opened a text from an unknown number. "Unknown, is this Isabel Martinez, the waitress from Orlaya?" She opened another. "My Columbia classmate, Isabel. Oh my God, have you seen Twitter? You're trending one worldwide." Isabel's heart stopped. Her thumb hovered over the Twitter icon. She was terrified. Had Whitmore already launched a smear campaign? Was she being painted as a thief, a crazy woman? She tapped the app. The first thing she saw was a video. It was shaky, clearly filmed from a nearby table, Table 3. The tech founders table. The title read, "Waitress Destroys Billionaire Marcus Whitmore in 5 languages. Epic takedown." The video already had 5.7 million views. It had been posted 3 hours ago. Isabel pressed play. She saw herself. The video quality was grainy, but the audio was crystal clear. She heard her own voice, steady and resonant, speaking German. She saw the shock on Whitmore's face. She saw the way the room fell silent. She scrolled to the comments. She expected hate. She expected people to side with the billionaire. "At Linguistics Nerd, I speak Mandarin. Her tones are literally perfect. This woman is a certified genius. Eat the rich." At Chicago Native, Marcus Whitmore getting owned by a waitress is the energy I needed this year. True poverty is a lack of virtue. Chills. At Latin Teacher, did she just quote Sic Transit Gloria Mundi at him? That is the most gangster mic drop in history. At Verified Journalist, who is she? The internet needs to find her and give her a crown. Isabel gasped. She wasn't being mocked. She was being celebrated. Then a notification popped at the top of the screen. A breaking news alert from a financial blog. Bloomberg Markets. Whitmore Capital Management stock drops 4% in after-hours trading following viral video of CEO Marcus Whitmore's restaurant meltdown. The phone buzzed again in her hand. This time it was a call. The caller ID said, Silicon Valley, CA. Isabel stared at it. It was 12:20 a.m. in Chicago. That meant 10:20 p.m. in California. She answered, "Hello," her voice was raspy. "Is this Isabel Martinez?" A man's voice, confident, fast-paced, but not unkind. "Yes, who is this?" "Hi, Isabel. My name is David Chen. I was sitting at table 3 tonight. I'm the one who filmed the video." Isabel went cold. You had no right. You've ruined my life. Whitmore will come after me." "Whitmore is finished, Isabel," David said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. "He just doesn't know it yet. The internet hates bullies, but it loves a prodigy. Look, I didn't just call to tell you I filmed it. I called because I looked you up." Isabel held her breath. Columbia University doctoral candidate, comparative linguistics, specialized in Romance language evolution, dropped out 4 years ago due to financial hardship. Father Carlos Martinez, former CEO of Martinez Literary Group. David paused. "I know what Whitmore did to your dad, Isabel. Everyone in the industry knows. They just don't talk about it." Isabel looked at her sleeping father. "What do you want, Mr. Chen?" "I don't want anything," David said, "but I think the world wants to hear your side of the story. I have a contact at the Chicago Tribune. She wants an exclusive tomorrow morning." And Isabel. "Yes. Don't worry about rent. I just started a GoFundMe for the polyglot waitress. It's been live for 30 minutes. "I don't need charity," Isabel said, her pride flaring despite her desperation. "It's not charity," David corrected. "It's back pay. It's at $75,000 already." Isabel dropped the phone on the bedsheets. $75,000. She looked at her father. He stirred in his sleep, letting out a soft sigh. "Papa," she whispered, tears streaming down her face again, but this time they weren't tears of despair. I think the numbers are changing." Outside the window of the care facility, the rain stopped. The clouds broke, revealing a sliver of moon. The storm was over, but the flood was just beginning. The morning sun hit Chicago's pavement with a clarity that felt almost blinding. For Marcus Whitmore, however, the day began in darkness. He sat in his corner office on the 63rd floor, the city skyline spread out behind him like a conquered kingdom. But today, the kingdom was revolting. His phone had been ringing since 5:00 a.m. His PR team, usually a phalanx of slick suits and confident smiles, looked like they'd survived a shipwreck. "It's trending on every platform, Marcus," his chief of communications said, her voice tight. "Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, LinkedIn. Even the Wall Street Journal has picked it up. The headline is the Whitmore Standard, a crisis of character." "It's a hit piece," Whitmore roared, slamming his hand on the mahogany desk. "It's one waitress, one disgruntled, insignificant waitress. Issue a statement. Say she was intoxicated. Say she was stealing. I don't care, just discredit her." "We can't," the lawyer interjected, looking pale. "There are witnesses. The tech CEO, David Chen, he's corroborated her story, and Ashley has left." Whitmore froze. "What?" "Ashley posted a statement on Instagram an hour ago." The lawyer slid an iPad across the desk. There was a photo of a packed suitcase by a door. The caption read, "Beauty fades, but dignity is forever. I'm done being an accessory. Thank you to the woman in black for waking me up. I stand with Isabel." Whitmore stared at the screen. The walls were closing in. He wasn't losing money, not yet. But he was losing something far more valuable to a narcissist, his narrative. He was no longer the titan of Wall Street. He was the villain in someone else's hero journey. 6 miles away, in a small crowded coffee shop in Logan Square, Isabel Martinez sat across from Jennifer Brooks, a senior investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune. Isabel wore her only good sweater, charcoal gray wool that had seen better days. She felt exposed, vulnerable. The other patrons were whispering. A barista had written "the genius" on her latte cup. "I don't want to destroy him," Isabel said quietly, her hands wrapped around the warm cup. "That's not who I am. I just want people to understand that dignity isn't a price tag." Jennifer nodded, recording every word. "Isabel, the video is powerful, but it's your history that makes this a story. Your father's company. The fact that Whitmore is the reason you're waiting tables. That's the tragedy. People are calling it the Count of Monte Cristo with a wine list." "My father," Isabel looked out the window. "He doesn't know, he can't know. If he finds out I've been fighting his battles, it might kill him. He thinks I'm still just studying." "The GoFundMe hit $300,000 this morning," Jennifer said gently. "You can get him the best care in the country now. You don't have to protect him from the truth anymore. You can protect him with the truth." Isabel looked down at her hands. The hands that had scrubbed counters, polished silver, and carried the weight of Marcus Whitmore's insults. "I want to finish my degree," Isabel said, her voice gaining strength. "That's what I want the article to say. I don't want to be a celebrity. I want to be Dr. Martinez. I want to finish what he started." The article dropped on Sunday. It was titled, "The Language of Dignity: How One Waitress Silenced Wall Street." It was a sensation. It didn't just detail the dinner. It detailed the history of Martinez Literary Group. It painted a portrait of a family broken by corporate greed and a daughter who had sacrificed her dreams to keep her father alive. By Monday morning, Whitmore Capital Management was in freefall. Investors, spooked by the public outcry and the viral nature of the scandal, now being called Whitmore Gate, began pulling their money. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Marcus Whitmore walked into the boardroom. He expected allies. He found executioners. "Marcus," the chairman said, not standing, "we think it's best if you step down." "Step down," Whitmore laughed, a high-pitched, manic sound. "I built this. You can't fire me because of a waitress." "We aren't firing you because of a waitress," the chairman said coldly. We're firing you because you've become a liability, and because, well, frankly, Marcus, we all watched the video. You looked small, and in this business you can be cruel, you can be greedy, but you cannot be small. Marcus Whitmore was escorted out of his own building by security guards who, just days before, had been too afraid to look him in the eye. As he stood on the sidewalk holding a box of his personal effects, a passerby recognized him. "Hey," the kid shouted, "read any good books lately?" The laughter that followed him down the street was worse than any bankruptcy. The seasons at Columbia turned with a kind of heavy, deliberate grace that Isabel Martinez had never experienced in the frenetic pace of Chicago's restaurant scene. Here, time didn't tick by in shift rotations or tip percentages. It measured itself in the turning of leaves, the accumulation of dust on library shelves, and the slow, steady scratching of pens against paper. 8 months had passed since the night the rain had washed away her life as a waitress. Isabel sat in the corner of Butler Library, a cathedral of knowledge that smelled of old books and possibility. The silence here was different from the silence at Orlia. That silence had been oppressive, a vacuum where the rich expected the poor to vanish. This silence was full, pregnant with thought. She looked at the laptop screen. The cursor blinked at the end of a 320-page document. The semiotics of power, how dialect constructs social hierarchy. It was her dissertation, the work she'd abandoned 4 years ago when the bank accounts froze and the creditors came knocking. The work Marcus Whitmore had mocked as the fantasy of an illiterate girl. Isabel reached out, her fingers hovering over the keys. Her hands, once red and chapped from sanitizing solution and dishwater, were healed. The calluses were fatting, replaced by the ink stains of a scholar. She typed the final dedication. To Carlos Martinez, who taught me that words are the only currency that never devalues. She pressed enter, then submit. A physical weight, heavy as stone, seemed to lift from her chest. She closed her eyes, exhaling a breath she felt she'd been holding since that night in Chicago. She wasn't just a viral sensation anymore. She wasn't just a charity case or a symbol of class warfare. She was Dr. Isabel Martinez. Her phone, resting on a stack of reference books, buzzed softly. It was the weekly video call. Isabel adjusted the screen, putting on a smile that came naturally now. "Hello, Papa." The image flickered and stabilized. Carlos Martinez was sitting in the sunroom of Lakeside Rehabilitation Center in Evanston. The facility was nothing like the grim, fluorescent-lit warehouse on the south side. Here, huge windows looked out onto Lake Michigan. There was light. There was dignity. "Bella," Carlos said. His voice was still slow, the vowels slightly elongated by the remnants of the stroke, but the fog that had shrouded his mind for years was lifting. "You look tired, the good kind of tired." "I finished it, Papa," she whispered, emotion catching in her throat. "I submitted the dissertation." Carlos's eyes, once milky and vacant, crinkled at the corners. He tapped his finger against the armrest of his wheelchair, a rhythmic, deliberate movement. "Dr. Martinez," he said, testing the weight of the title. "It suits you better than the apron." Isabel laughed, wiping a stray tear. "Much better than the apron." She leaned closer to the screen. "I have something else to tell you, something about the business." Carlos's face tightened almost imperceptibly. The mention of Martinez Literary Group usually brought a shadow over him, a phantom pain from the empire he'd lost. "It's good news," Isabel assured him quickly. "I received a legal packet this morning from the new ownership group that bought out Whitmore's assets." Carlos remained silent, listening. "They aren't just liquidating, Papa, they've gone through the archives. They realized that the backlist, the books you curated, the authors you discovered, that's where the real value was. They're launching a new imprint next month." She took a breath. "They're calling it the Martinez Collection, and they want to pay retroactive royalties on the intellectual property. They said. They said they want to restore the name to where it belongs. For a long moment, the only sound was the static of the connection. Carlos Martinez looked out the window of the sunroom, watching sailboats on the lake. When he turned back to the camera, his chin was lifted. The defeated man who had mumbled about inventory in the dark was gone. He thought he could erase us, Carlos said, his voice dropping to a low, fierce whisper. He thought money was an eraser. He was wrong, Isabel said. Read to me, Carlos asked, his voice softening. Just a paragraph to celebrate. Isabel reached into her bag. She didn't pull out a linguistics text. She pulled out a battered paperback copy of The Count of Monte Cristo, the book she'd read on the L during her shifts at Oralia. She opened it to the final page. Live then and be happy, beloved children of my heart, and never forget that until the day when God shall deign to reveal the future to man, all human wisdom is summed up in these two words, wait and hope. Wait and hope, Carlos repeated, closing his eyes. We waited, Bella, we waited. The evening air in New York was crisp, carrying the scent of rain on pavement, a scent that used to make Isabel shiver with dread but now felt cleansing. She walked down the narrow streets of the West Village toward the Copper Vine, a small, warm wine bar tucked away from the tourist crowds. It was the kind of place with exposed brick and candles flickering on tables, imperfect, intimate, and real. David Chen was already there, sitting at a corner table. The man who had filmed the video, the man who had inadvertently launched her new life, stood up as she approached. He looked slightly out of place in his Silicon Valley hoodie among the artists and academics, but his smile was genuine. Dr. Martinez, I presume, David grinned, extending a hand. Not officially until the defense next month, Isabel corrected, taking his hand warmly. But close enough. It's good to see you, David. They sat down. The atmosphere was easy. Over the last 8 months, David had become an unexpected friend, a bridge between the world she'd left and the world she was building. So, David said, leaning back, the internet is still asking about you. I get messages every day. Where is the polyglot waitress? Is she running for Congress? Did she buy a mansion? Isabel laughed, shaking her head. No mansions, just tuition payments and medical bills. I like the quiet, David. I spent too long having to perform for people. I'm happy just being normal. Normal is good, David nodded. Then his expression grew more serious. Speaking of performing, I thought you'd want to know. The SEC wrapped up their investigation into Whitmore Capital Management yesterday. Isabel paused. She hadn't searched Marcus Whitmore's name in months. And it's a bloodbath, David said, not with glee but with a cold statement of fact. Insider trading, embezzlement, fraud. Turns out when you treat your employees like garbage, they don't shred the incriminating documents when the feds come knocking. They hand them over. Where is he? Out on bail, living in a studio apartment in Newark. His wife left him, took the house, the cars, everything. Ashley testified against him. He's irrelevant, Isabel. He walks into a room now and people don't fear him. They just pity him. Isabel looked down at the scratched wood of the table. She expected to feel triumph. She expected a surge of vindication. But all she felt was a quiet release. The monster under the bed had shrunk into a sad, lonely man in Newark. He was never rich, Isabel said softly. He just had a lot of money. There's a difference. Just then, a shadow fell over their table. Good evening, a voice cracked. A young waiter stood there. He couldn't have been more than 20. He was pale, his hands trembling visibly as he held a bottle of red wine and a corkscrew. His uniform was slightly too big, the sleeves bunching at his wrists. I have the Pinot Noir you ordered, the boy stammered. He looked terrified. He looked exactly how Isabel had felt 1,000 times. He tried to insert the corkscrew. His hand slipped. The metal scraped against the glass with a harsh screech. "I'm sorry," the boy gasped, pulling back as if expecting to be struck. "I'm so sorry, I'm new, I just—" David opened his mouth perhaps to say, "It's okay." But Isabel held up a hand. She saw the panic in the boy's eyes. She saw the ghost of Marcus Whitmore hovering over his shoulder, the fear of the mistake, the fear of the illiterate label. Isabel stood up slowly. She didn't tower over him. She moved to his side, entering his space not as a customer, but as an ally. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice low and anchoring. "Miguel," he breathed. "Miguel," Isabel said, "look at me." He looked up, eyes wide. "You're doing fine," she said. "The wine isn't going anywhere, and neither are we." She reached out and gently covered his hands with hers. Her hands were steady. "The trick," she said, slipping into Spanish without thinking, then correcting herself to English, "is to not fight the bottle. Let the lever do the work. It's simple physics. You are stronger than the cork." She guided his hand. She adjusted the angle of the screw. "Twist," she instructed softly. "Now pull slowly, breathe out." Pop! The cork emerged smoothly, intact. A rich aroma of dark cherries filled the air between them. Miguel stared at the bottle, then at Isabel. A flush of relief washed over his face, transforming him from a terrified kid into a proud young man. "Thank you," Miguel whispered. I was so nervous. The manager is watching." "Tell the manager," Isabel said, looking toward the bar where a stern-looking woman was watching, "that you provided excellent service. Because you did." Miguel poured the wine, a steady, perfect pour, and retreated, walking with newfound confidence in his step. David watched the scene unfold, a look of profound respect on his face. He picked up his glass. "You know," David said quietly, "you could have just told him it was okay, but you taught him." "Marcus Whitmore called me illiterate," Isabel said, picking up her own glass. The wine caught the candlelight, glowing like a ruby. "He thought that meant I couldn't read, but real illiteracy is the inability to read people. It's the inability to read fear or pain or potential." She looked at the empty spot where the waiter had stood, then out the window to the New York night. "I spent years serving people who thought they were better than me because they sat at the table while I stood," Isabel concluded. "But I learned something tonight, David." "What's that?" "The view is much better when you help someone else stand up." She clinked her glass against his. The sound rang out clear, resonant, and final. "To the margins," Isabel said. "To the margins," David replied. They drank. The wine was a simple Pinot Noir, costing maybe $45 a bottle. But as Isabel swallowed, tasting the earth and the fruit, she knew the truth. It was the richest thing she'd ever tasted. And that is the story of how one, illiterate, waitress took down a billionaire without throwing a single punch, just by using the power of her mind. It's a reminder that true class isn't about what you wear or what you drive. It's about how you treat people who can do nothing for you. Isabel Martinez taught the world that words are weapons, and when you sharpen them with knowledge, no amount of money can protect a bully. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a little inspiration today. And if you haven't already, subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. What would you have done if you were in Isabel's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and stay inspired.